shall we? Good morning and welcome to Kids Church, and a big special to Daniel this morning as well. He's here to join us for Kids Church. Now, I've got some bags with me this morning and we're going to talk about these bags just now. So, the first bag I have here is this little tiny bag. Now, if you were at nursery school, maybe even before you started proper school, just going to nursery, you might use a bag that's just inside. Because let's face it, you don't have very much to bring with you. Really all you need is maybe a packet of crayons, maybe a colouring book. And truth is, you probably really don't even need those because they'll all be there waiting for you when you get there. But you wouldn't need a bag any bigger than that. That's really all that you would need. So we'll pop that over there. Then maybe you get a bit older and you go to primary school. And maybe you're like 10, 9, 10, 11, something like that. And you need a bigger bag. I know this is a pink one, boys, but it's all good there. You need a bag like this. And now you've got a few more things that you have to remember to bring with you. For a start, you need to remember, make sure you've got your reading book. Then you'd also have to have your spelling book. And of course, you're going to need a big pencil case. And that will go in there too. And you might also have homework sheets. You have to remember to bring them. You have to remember to do your homework and bring them back the next day. There's a lot more involved in this bag. Then, you know, in a few years' time, Denzel and Daniel, you'll be going to big school. And you're going to need a bigger bag. Maybe one like this. Now you've got so much to remember. You're going to have a book for English, a book for science, a book for maths, a book for geography. You're going to need a great big file with all your paper in it. You need a massive big pencil case, calculators still up. You're going to need a big bag and it's going to be heavy. Right? Next bag. Now even when we're adults, you've left school, so even teachers, I can tell you, this is like Claire's bag when she goes to school every morning. I just can't quite manage to lift it here. That's why they're going on strike next week. It's big, it's full of books, even the teacher has to remember to bring. And everybody has to remember to bring the right books on the right day. Do you know, even as adults, for our hobbies, sometimes we have things we need to bring with us. Now, Gordon, he likes a bit of walking and hiking, and you might remember that last year Gordon went hiking to Mount Everest. I can't even carry this, Gordon, come up here. He had to bring a big rucksack like this. Now, in that rucksack, he had to have everything. He had to have a sleeping bag in there. He had to have sun cream in there in case it was hot. He had to have gloves and scarf in case it was cold. He had to have waterproofs in case it was raining. He had to have a lunchbox and probably bigger than that. Lots and lots of things, maps, water, all sorts of things that he had to bring with him when he went up into the moors or into Mount Everest. And you know, even when I go to work, I have to bring the suitcase. And not only that, but if I'm going on a long trip, which I do sometimes, as well as bringing one suitcase, some days I'm even seen going to work like this with two suitcases, right or wrong. There you go. And even this morning, I had to remember to bring all of those things together, and I needed this big cat to bring them with me, and now I'm exhausted. Now, all through our life, we have things to bring with us. We have things that we carry around with us. And when we're little, it doesn't really take much effort. We need a little bag because we don't have much to remember. But as we go through all the stages of our life, we have more and more responsibility. We have more things that we have to remember to bring with us. More things that we're responsible for. I'm getting breath back after all that. Now, last week, if you remember, we said, we don't know what's ahead of us in our life. We don't know what the next part of our journey is going to be. But we do know that God knows, and God has a plan. God has a good plan for our lives. So we just need to be able to trust him. Last week we started the story of Joseph. And when we picked up the story of Joseph, he was 17. Now kids, you might think 17 is old and grown up. But if you're standing where I am, or where Gordon is, or Robert is, 17 is young. So Joseph was young and happy. He was his dad's favourite. Life was good. Then, of course, he had those brothers that didn't really like him very much. In fact, they actually hated him, and they wanted to kill him, do you remember? That wasn't quite so good, was it? No. But then we heard about how God protected him, and his life was spared, so that was good. But he was dragged off to a strange country where he had no friends, no family, nobody he knew at all, so that wasn't so good at all. But of course, he was sold as a slave to a man called Potiphar, who we heard was like head of royal security. So he would have had a nice house. So Joseph was alive and well and in a good place. So that was fairly good. Now we're going to hear the next part of Joseph's story today. So, Joseph is now in Potiphar's house. He is a slave, and he's a new slave, so he probably got all the horrible jobs to do. Maybe something like he was put out in the garden to dig up all the weeds, the back-breaking job that nobody else wanted to do. But you know what? Joseph did his best, and he did a good job. I don't know, the Bible doesn't tell us. Maybe he was promoted to head gardener, and he was in charge of all the other gardeners, and the garden never looked so good because Joseph did a good job. Where it was warm and cozy, maybe they got him to clean the toilets, and the toilets never looked so good or smelled so fresh because Joseph again did his best and did a really good job. I don't know, maybe he worked in the kitchen doing the dishes. We don't really know, but we do know that whatever Joseph did, he did well. He trusted God, and he did his best. Because God wants us always to do our best and to work for the people that we're working for. So it's in school, you work and do your best. When you go to get a job, you work and you try to do your best. Remembering all the time that God will be there to help you. And after a while, Potiphar noticed this. He noticed that everything Joseph did, he did well. But he also noticed that Joseph trusted God. And he worshipped God, because Joseph was brought up to know, like you know, there's one true God. But in that strange country where Joseph was now, in Egypt, the people there had moved away from God. Now they worship the sun, the moon, the stars, animals, all fantastic things that God created. But they were just things, not gods. And Joseph knew about the one true God who he worshipped. Potiphar had noticed this, that God helped Joseph with everything that he did. So Potiphar was a bit clever. And he said to himself, if I was to put Joseph in charge of everything that I have, God will help him to do a really good job. So I won't need to worry about anything. Everything that Joseph does is successful, and everything in my house will be well looked after, because God will be with Joseph, and Joseph will do a good job. So Potiphar put Joseph in charge of everything. He was in charge of everything in the house. He was in charge of servants and slaves, everything in the house. He was also in charge of the farm outside. He was in charge of the fields, the crops, the livestock, and everything that Joseph did. God helped him to do a really good job, and it was successful. So Potiphar didn't have to worry about anything, and Joseph was his favourite because he knew that he could trust Joseph to do a good job. But also, Potiphar's wife, she also noticed Joseph, and she kind of got to like Joseph, and he was her favourite as well. But one day, Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph to do something, and she asked him to do it, and Joseph knew that it was something that he shouldn't do, so he said, no, I'm not going to do that, because I shouldn't do that. But every day, Potiphar's wife kept asking him, Joseph, will you do it today? Joseph, come on, I want you to do something. Now remember that Potiphar's wife was Joseph's boss's wife, And slaves were supposed to do anything their bosses asked them to do, but Joseph still knew that this was wrong, and he said to her, I won't do that. It would be awful for me to do that against Potiphar. He's been so good to me and I won't do it. But my bottom line is it would be a sin against God, and I will not do that. Potiphar's wife didn't give up. She kept asking, and even one day she tried to trap Joseph in the house. And she said, Joseph, there's nobody else about. No one will even know. And Joseph knew that God would know. And he said, no, I will not sin against God. And he ran out of the house. That made Potiphar's wife mad. She was so angry. When Potiphar came back home, his wife said to him that Joseph had done this awful thing. She told lies about him. And you know what? Potiphar believed his wife. And he believed that Joseph had done this awful thing. And he was so cross with Joseph, he threw him into prison. Have you ever got blamed for doing something that you didn't do? It's not nice. Do you think that was part of God's plan for Joseph's life? Well, Joseph still trusted God. He didn't give up. He still trusted God. He still worshipped God. And while he was in prison, he did all the jobs he was meant to do. And guess what? He did his best. And very soon the prison warden noticed Joseph as well. He noticed that everything Joseph did, he did well. And he also noticed that Joseph worshipped God. And very soon Joseph became the prison warden's favourite as well. And so he was a bit clever like Potiphar, and he said, if I put Joseph in charge, everything will go well because Joseph will do a good job and his God will help him and give him success. So once again, here was Joseph in a strange country, no friends, no family. He was in prison, but he still had God. And he still worshipped God. He didn't grumble and complain. He still did his best. And the prison warden didn't have to worry about anything because Joseph looked after all of the other prisoners. He looked after, made sure that all the jobs got done. And Joseph probably would have had a nice cell in the prison. He probably would have had the best food. So even though he was a stranger in a different country and he was in prison, at least he would have been pretty well looked after. Maybe that was part of God's plan for Joseph. Or at the very least, it's God being able to use a bad situation for Joseph's good. So let's come back to these bags. See, when we start off our life, we do have friends. But the friends we have, it's people maybe your mum and dad already know. Maybe they take you to someone's house to have a play date, or maybe someone comes to your house, but someone that your mum and dad know. Then when you get a bit older and you move up through school, you might be able to choose your own friends. Friends that maybe your family don't even know. And especially when you go to big school or even when you go to work, you will choose friends. But you need to be careful the friends that you choose. And it might not always be possible to have Christian friends. It might not always be possible to have friends that also love God like you do. Where I work, I don't know if there's anyone else who loves God. So if you ever end up in that situation, you need to be careful to choose your friends. I'm not saying not to have friends, I don't mean that. But be careful what you do. If your friends or someone who's your boss or anyone else asks you to do something that you know God would want you to do, I'm telling you and teaching you now while you're young, always say no. So all through your life, whatever stage, whatever baggage you have with you, be careful to do what God wants you to do and not to do things that you know God wouldn't want you to do. And remember, God has a plan, a good plan for your life. So, we're going to sing a song. Now, this is a golden oldie song. I don't imagine the kids will know it. Maybe some of the adults won't even know it. This is a blowback from the past, so Kenny might know it. What's it called again? He's got my life in the palm of his hands. We're going to just do some actions with it as well. He's got my life. He's in my
got